Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast. And Romana's just doing a little jiggy jig jig.
It's Dan said the other day, he was like, I feel like I'm itching, like there's something crawling on me, but there's nothing there. And I'm sat here and I'm like, there's these tiny little black wiggly bug things. So if you see me kind of doing this at any point, it's because obviously it's ridiculously hot outside. So all the windows are open and these little buggy things keep landing on me and making me itch.
It's muggy, isn't it? Like it's a bit dreary here, but it's really hot.
Oh no, so we've got blue skies, roasting sunshine. My laptop's lying to me saying it's 23 degrees. My car was more like 33 degrees.
We've spoken about this before as well, of heat sensitivity, haven't we?
Mm,
It's like,
yeah, I can't sleep at the moment. It's so ridiculous.
and there's literally nothing you can do. Like, majority of my clients, I'm like, you're all pretty much reporting in check-ins. I can't sleep. It's too hot. And other than a fan and windows open, it's like, what can we do?
Ice pack
You
down
need
the front of my shorts. Oh, that's actually touching skin. Always wrap it in a tea towel, guys.
now you need to watch the YouTube for that bit, but also, so my client and best friend Victoria, oh, that way. I always think with the camera. She got me this made like literally must have been maybe like 10 years ago, right? So obviously I was a natty bikini very early on in my competitive journey, but the caricature did this muscular physique, and I was like, I've got to get this out on the pod today to show Romana because
Yeah,
I think she's manifested that I'm gonna one day be figure.
yeah, I think so. Give yourself another strong off season. You'll be there with those
Yeah,
back muscles.
I referenced this. I can't remember what pod it was, but I was like, Romana's had a look at my physique as I was dieted down, and as you said, maybe with another off season, there could be the potential to essentially move up. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna keep an open mind to it because I feel like as well, you of course have moved up to WBB. You never really know, do you?
No, it was like even the transition from figure to WPD, it was like it was no direct feedback because I still didn't really understand how you got it when you had to collar a judge at some point um, at the show. But it was evident looking at the lineup that the condition I was bringing was probably too much for figure. So it's like, well, if that's how I get, let's just see what happens with a really long off season. And it happened. And then last year it was just a case of eat, and it happened. So when we joked about tripping and falling into women's bodybuilding, but yeah,
Yeah,
it, that's a bit
wow,
too
isn't
cold.
it? Well, you said about putting it down your front. We're going to talk about urinary explorations today.
Prep peas and the amount of bladders you seem to accumulate as you get deeper in prep, and that's before you even start water loading.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is as well with this subject, as it were, I was talking about this. So I actually met Nikki, my bikini sponsor, who at a show, and that was yesterday. And I was like, oh my God, I've met her in real life. And we were talking about, I was like, we're gonna do a pod on urinary explorations. There's definitely different things we can talk about, and even the thoughts of like thrush. Giving the
Yep.
listeners a bit of an insight into what we're going to talk about today. Things like thrush, multiple P's. There's things in off season as well. There's so many different things that can occur, and it's like I don't feel like they're really sort of spoken about, like the GI one, right? Like people are like,
Yeah.
you're talking about things that I've never even heard of before.
My biggest fear with anything prep urinary related is that need to go to the toilet, having to hold it because you can't find a toilet, and ending up with a UTI,
Yeah, yeah,
especially on the like when you're water loading on the lead up to show day. And if you're like we spoke about on the pod that's going to be released tomorrow, or I don't even know what day this is going to be. So yeah, on the 30th, it's like when you're then competing in a hot country, even in the UK, it's like you're water loading, you're then restricting water,
mm,
you're then getting on stage under hot lights. Oh, it's just
yeah, yeah. It's as well when you get. I think that there can be almost this common misconception as to what a UTI is, but when you get like a proper UTI, like, oh my God, like this is
Yeah.
next level. I remember when I got my first one, and like it's almost like I don't want to be too drastic, but you're like, I can't live through this. Like, isn't it though? It's
Pissing razor blades.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, as you touched on there, the manipulations as a bodybuilder that we make around all the different things that we do. Then we got PDs and various other things. It's like, again, it's like this can of worms, isn't it? As to what
Yeah.
can happen.
Well, not just PEDs, but you think like for myself, when I'm in prep, my sleep goes to shit. I use Zopiclone. Something I've discovered, and I did. I've remembered. So off the back of last prep, and the strain with my abs, I actually went to pelvic floor physio,
Yes.
and one of the things I spoke about was the need to go for a pee, but then when you actually sit on the toilet, not being able to go, and it's the ability to relax those pelvic floor muscles. And something I discussed with her was using Zopiclone to help me sleep when I'm in prep. That being a central nervous system down regulator. So you're going to have an inability to kind of relax those muscles because of that as well. It's like there's so many factors, but you literally sit there for about 20 minutes trying to squeeze out your eighth bladder piss before you go to bed. And inevitably, you're still going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning needing fucking piss again anyway.
It is wild because it's like, when you are in the example of peaking for a show, there's always that like when you got to travel. Again, it's like GI related. Like if you need to go, fuck, and with the pissing, I remember so many shows where I've been on these like long car journeys, and I'm like,
Yeah,
and it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's like you need to pee, and then it gets to that point where you're like, it's hurting, and it's actually like, is this damaging my bladder? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's if anyone out there has had something called polynephritis, which is basically when the UTI tracks up into your kidneys, that is next level. It becomes what we call systemic. So it's not just the infection isn't just located now in the bladder, it's kind of going around the whole body. So that's when, I mean, you can end up with a high temperature and feeling all kinds of squiffy from a UTI as well. It doesn't necessarily have to track to your kidneys for it to have that effect. But I was so unwell. I was throwing up. I wasn't bodybuilding. I was working in the ambulances and like trying to manage a 12-hour shift. Like, and that was also when I found out that codeine makes me projectile vomit. So I was literally with my crewmate. He'd go into the house to the patient. I'd be sat in the ambulance with a clinical waste bag, throwing up in the back. I'd get in the front, drive to hospital, have to run in to throw up again or pee, one or the other. And he's literally just having to deal with a patient all by himself because sickness. Anyway, that's just going off on another tangent. But yeah, it was quite strictly monitored in the ambulance service.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this actually relates as well to, we have touched on it a bit, but diuretic use. So when we're looking at this realm, I feel like this is a good point to sort of maybe touch on that as well, because, you know, there's so many things in the bodybuilding space that occur that, it's like, oh, well, my coach just told me to do this or whatever. Maybe you're even going on your own tangent. Some people do. And the danger behind some of the things that can occur. And this is where, your medical background, it's wild what can occur, and what about that, right, as a coach, and being able to bring that to the pod is super fucking cool, because it might seem like, okay, so we get this physique response from doing XYZ, dehydrating, diuretics, whatever it is, but after the show, or even, there's been things that have happened at shows, hasn't there, when there's crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, there was. I was actually listening to a podcast about the WPD competitor that died at the Arnold's, and that was it was Justin Mahaley's client. I don't know if I'm saying his surname right, but she was using DNP and diuretics. She wasn't competing. She was just at the show wanting to look good. And it's like it's mental that she basically DMP's effectively rat poison. It's pretty fucking awful. But then on top of that, with diuretics, she basically, and I could be getting this wrong. I think she pissed out all of her potassium and ended up hypokalemic. Yeah, I'm getting it right. And basically, potassium is quite crucial in cardiac muscle contractivity. So you piss all of that out, your heart stopped beating.
Yeah.
and that's effectively what happened to her. But it's like the mentalness that wasn't even to step on stage. I mean, death is fucking
Wild.
yeah. Like as far as a side effect of bodybuilding, that's the
Mm,
worst.
mm.
But to put yourself through all of that just to effectively attend an expo
Yeah, for an
is
athlete.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. But that, in itself, to be fair, and I know this is going to go into a tangent, but the psychology side of things for bodybuilders, and it's stuff we've probably touched on over different subjects and stuff, but it's like you're so driven by an aesthetic. What are people going to think of me? I'm going to see all of these people. Okay, so I'll use X or I'll do X. And you don't often think about, unless, like yourself, you're medically trained, you're not thinking about all of the things that could happen.
Yeah.
It's so fucking wild, isn't it? Like you say at an expo, I remember the days of body power, etc. And people would be, shredded all year round to be at expos. They weren't competitors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was Rich Piana's sort of MA, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It was
Because
just look big as fuck.
yeah, yeah, watching the documentaries and stuff, I'm like, and the thing is, bodybuilding is so fucking cool, as we know. It's weird, wonderful. It's what we love. It's what we're passionate about. But then there's that side of the sport that maybe isn't explored. And I mean, I don't know how many people listen that would delve into things like diuretics, etc. I it's hard to know what realms people start to consider it in the female side of it, like
Yeah.
fit model, bikini, figure, etc., where we would start to look at that as well.
I would say realistically, top level figure maybe,
Mm,
but below that is as far as muscularity categories, a diuretic's not really going to benefit you because you don't need that level of condition.
mm, mm.
It's like you should be lean enough, and all the diuretic's going to do is kind of flatten you off a little bit more, as well as make you feel like shit the next day, which is kind of what I experienced.
Yeah, for sure. We spoke about Pete Max as well, didn't we? As
Mm,
to where you would utilize that. Again, I love how you just said if you're ready, because it's like if you're ready, the peak can be pretty basic, really.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it shouldn't be a whole load of fuck wittery if you're ready.
Mm,
But then obviously things it is dynamic and things go wrong. People respond differently. The carb might not go quite as planned.
mm,
Even like the way the weather's been in the UK, it was relatively cool. Like Wednesday, I think it rained, and we're back to like 30-degree heat. That's going to mess around with your fluid balance.
mm, mm.
You're going to sweat more. You're going to need more water. Like water cutting on the day of Empro, it got to the point where Dan was just like, just if you're thirsty, just drink. Because it's that balance of like, yeah, we want an Olympia qualification, but I don't want to end up in hospital with dehydration because of it. Like, no thanks.
No, but
That would be a bill we would not be prepared for.
and people listening as well, it's like, well, like you say with a bill, but it's like the thing is, there is points of it's like risk reward for anything in bodybuilding. It's like you've got to sometimes have a bit of a sensible head on here. Yes, like you say, you're going for an Olympia qualification, so that's the pinnacle of what you want to do. But is it really worth the
Yeah,
the consequences of that? But again, it's like people are going to be in scenarios where they maybe don't have that educated mind themselves and a lot of reliance is on the coach and sometimes it's like can you give more verbal feedback to your coach, can you maybe communicate more if you don't feel right, obviously we're talking about urine infections as well and things like this, you need to be able to actually speak to your coach about that if there's something that's not right as well because we can all
yeah.
go I'm fine. We're all good, we're all good.
I just sort of randomly, my phone just pinged up with somebody WPD IFBB Pro ringing my personal phone. Nobody's got this number. So weird. That's what my moment of distraction was like. It was so quick, I didn't even see who the name. It was Anita, somebody or other. God
Oh,
knows.
she's clever.
Random. No
Well,
idea.
at least it's related to competing.
It is. Yeah, it is. What was I going to say? The water loading for Empro. I kept like obviously we've got our standardized salt intake and we've upped our fluid. And it was like, it was so hot, I was cramping because the balance wasn't quite right. Because it just moving around, it's like having to move on meals, but then having to go outside, you're just literally sweating all that fluid out.
I feel like as well being in the heavily muscled divisions, again, there's the merit to realizing your body's holding and carrying a lot more muscle here. So
It it's the biggest take home from this prep is it hit different. It's like, yeah, I didn't have to do as much cardio, but sitting in that lower calorie space, even though it's not as low as I've had to go in the past.
Mhm.
I've now got my feet stuck to the dog bed. Sorry, this is all of the distractions today. My calories didn't have to go as low as they did in previous preps, but it felt the same.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And with regards to when you, because I guess we could talk a little bit about, we did touch on it already, but what you happened with the calves, the feet, and the swelling, etc.
Yeah,
This can tie into the urinary explorations as well, because
water rebound.
yeah, yeah,
I don't think my water retention was more the heat, the illness,
yeah,
and the lack of sleep because it didn't actually come on until like the Friday,
yeah.
rather than where you would expect it to be kind of a couple of days plus the flight maybe would impact it. But yeah, water retention post show, that water rebound is not just experiencing the little bit that I did this time.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It literally feels like your feet are sausages and they're going to explode.
Yeah. And other than raising your feet, was there anything else that you sort of came across that you were like, this is really helping?
Um, Putting my feet in a cold bath.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, that was nice. And actually, it came off pretty like once I felt better and I could get back to the gym and was able to do some cardio, it came off literally within like 36 hours, 24 hours. Came off really quickly. But it was just that perfect cacophony of yeah,
And the illness as well.
yeah.
Mm.
Still blowing my nose.
Yeah. Have you found that now you've made it so any of the listeners that aren't aware, now you've made the decision that prep has ended and we're essentially reversing out. How's that feeling now in regards to everything? Do you feel quite settled about it?
I will do. I'm hoping Dan's going to get my plan across to me so I can actually start that tomorrow because
Okay.
I've just sort of been doing my own, just been eating what kind of I want. We went for breakfast yesterday. We had the most bland carbonara for dinner last night.
Yes. You're gonna come round ours and have a proper one with a fire.
Yeah, it's fucking awful. Um, so yeah, I've just sort of had some nice food, and now I just want to get back to actually training in off season because I've had I trained Thursday, but I haven't trained since because Dan was just like, you just need to rest, get your sleep on point, and get recovered. And I do feel better from this cold, but the heat, yeah, it's just trashing the sleep like everybody else.
Mm,
And
mm.
then again, because it's hot, you're drinking more water, you need to pee more, so that's waking you up more. Yeah.
Have you got any tips and tricks from your journey in regards to the peeing throughout the night? Because when I started out, I'm just thinking if there's any listeners that are just starting out, I was like, right, I'll cut off drinking at a certain time, or not do this, I'll do this, and I tried so many different things.
I wouldn't say specifically to the waking up in the night thing because I that is a struggle. Yeah, reducing your water intake as it gets later into the night.
Mm,
But where it is so hot at the moment, you're wanting to keep drinking. And like for me, for example, my last meal is oats, which has got water in it. So it doesn't matter if I don't drink because
mhm,
that's still going to come out. But something I did try and practice a little bit more, which came off the back of the pelvic floor physio, was kind of almost bladder training a little bit. So the it gets a little bit psychosomatic, and I don't know if you get this with prep as well, where you're like, I'm drinking a load of water. I know I'm going to need to pee. I feel fucked. I can't be asked to get up, but I really need to pee. So you'll get up, you'll have this little tiny dribble of urine. You sit back down on the sofa and you're like, fuck's sake, I need to piss again.
yeah.
So what I was doing, so for example, I'd have my shower before bed at about 6 o'clock. Then I'd pee afterwards, make my final meal, sit on the sofa, and we'd normally get into bed at about 8. So I'd end up sitting down on the sofa just after 7 o'clock, having just gone for a piss prior to that. And I'm sat there and I'm like, oh, I think I need to piss again. And I'm like, but it's literally less than an hour before I go to bed. So just sit with it. And that did actually help because I was then able to go a lot quicker
Mm-hmm.
when I actually went. There was none of this sitting there waiting for 20 minutes. But that also helped with being out and about because you're sort of training your mind in a sort of safe environment that if you do really need to pee, you can just go. Because I don't know about anyone else out there, it's like that fear of being stuck in traffic. It's
Yeah,
like I don't give a fuck. I will piss on the side of the road between two car doors.
me
If the
too.
traffic's moving, if I'm out in the field on a dog walk, like I've been known to do it in car parks in the corner because I really needed to go. So it's like that doesn't bother me, but standstill traffic on the motorway and you're in the outside lane and the lay-by's all the way over there and there's HGVs and everything, that's a little bit. It's like if they see my ass and they're shuttling themselves towards the north of England, it doesn't bother me. But if I could end up like locking eyes with them on the way back to the car, I'm like, no, I'm out.
I like that you said brain training actually, because I mean, this relates to quite a few things as bodybuilders when we fine tune what we're looking to essentially not over obsess about as
Yeah,
business, because you know what it's like. You can get into the nitty gritty and you become this cray cray because you're like, oh, I'm going to monitor everything. And I feel like probably sleep is one of the things that you can obviously tell yourself, well, I'm not going to sleep. And you can work on, soothing things and apps. There's different meditate. Da, 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 da. There's lots of things you can think about. Peeing is also one of them because you can, as you rightly said there, I used to do that. It's a bit like when you said poo anxiety for
yeah,
check-in. It's
but
like,
the other way.
yeah, pee anxiety because you're like, oh, I'm gonna wake up this many times, and I can't remember where I saw it somewhere where you can try and allow your bladder to fill up more.
Yeah,
I think that's probably what you're describing there before
yeah,
you actually release it because nothing bad's gonna happen if you were to actually hold on to it a little bit, unless you're obviously holding on to a full bladder and it's like, oh shit, that's
uncomfortable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think sometimes you're like, well, I need to pee, and you're going for that knee-jerk reaction, if you know what I mean.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think there's something the other side of it as well, which I don't know about you, I'm lucky to not have an issue with, is any incontinence when lifting, because that's a thing too.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, it was quite with CrossFit, it was talked about a lot more. Double unders, that's like one surefire way, especially if you had a child. I think it's happened to me once and
Yeah.
maybe once when I've deadlifted, but the rest of like otherwise I don't have any problems. But I do know even like Hunter Henderson, she put up a video about being interviewed by Jesse James West, and he was asking about the side effects of anabolics, and she was like, "I get stress incontinence
Oh,
like as one of her side effects."
okay.
Um, so it is, and she, as far as I'm aware, she's not had children either.
Mm.
But I know that obviously when you have had a child, pelvic floor muscles are not quite so tight. Practice your Kegels. Um, but it can happen if you haven't had a child as well. And I think, it can be a massive area of embarrassment. But at the end of the day, it's like you see some of the male powerlifters and there's fucking snot and blood coming out their nose. In my head, it's more or less the same thing. If anything, snot's a lot more disgusting than a bit of urine inside your leggings, you know.
Do you remember when it was going around on social media that there was male bodybuilders like deadlifting or leg pressing and they were shitting themselves? Did you?
I, I don't remember that,
You'll
but
have to ask Dan about it. It was really weird because there was videos on Instagram of like famous, well, Insta famous or however you want to frame it, people shitting themselves when they were doing deadlifts and leg press, and I was like, not sure about this.
I would have thought like, I don't know, maybe you need to reevaluate your pre-workout a little bit there.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
depending on whether you're off season or or prep as well,
My
how
God,
much
yeah.
how much is going
Off,
to come out. So when it comes to thrush, so I personally, I've never really had, troubles with this, but I have noticed in probably the last year or so that actually about 3 or 4 days before I'm due on, I get thrush. And when it first happened, I thought it was a UTI. So I'm like, shit, I've
yeah.
got a UTI. And then my period, and then I started to get this every month or every 3 to 4 weeks, my period is. And I was like, This is really weird at first, but it's carried on, and it's something that
Mm.
I essentially get every menstrual cycle now. Have you come across that? Have you had it in the past, etc., etc.?
I've had thrush, but not through like being
Cycle.
anything related to menstruation.
Mm.
Um, I can't remember when I got thrush, to be honest. It's been a very, very long time, but it is obviously very, very common, and it's just basically a pH imbalance that causes a buildup of bacteria that we don't, or it can be pH imbalance that causes a buildup of bacteria or destroys your natural bacteria. Like if you've ever been on that was it, antibiotics. Yeah, that's a classic one,
Yeah, I've had that.
especially if I've had coamoxiclav for infected neck piercing.
Oh, how right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, and yeah, that I ended up with thrush off the back of that because it just kills all your bacteria. It's the same reason why you can end up having the shits after antibiotics, having diarrhea, because it's killed all your good gut bacteria. Of course, saying that quickly is a challenge.
Mm.
But yeah, it's pretty harmless but pretty irritating.
Yeah, yeah. I literally just use the gel or the cream, and it tends to just.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just right because I know what it is and when it's going to occur. I can sort of ride it out. But when you first ever get thrush, well, like
Mm.
a UTI, you're like, what the fuck is going on? And also, there's an element, and it's just sprung to my mind a story when I first got thrush, and I didn't want to say to Matt because I was like, what, like, is there something going on? And I actually messaged my mum, and I was like it's hurting a bit when I pee, but it's not a UTI because I know what a UTI feels like. I don't know what. And then she got me some fresh stuff. Matt's not home, so he doesn't hit. And
Yeah.
she hid it under my wash. She'd done some of my washing, hid it, and I used it. But I guess people listening could be in a similar scenario with like not wanting to speak to their partner, maybe because it's a bit embarrassing.
There was UTIs more specifically than thrush. But I remember having one like when I was at uni, and whoever I was dating at the time, it is that awkwardness of no, it's a urine infection. It's not a sexually transmitted infection.
Yeah,
They're they're different. And Dan, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, can't hear anyway. Dan actually had one before Christmas, and it is rarer for men to get UTIs. And we did have quite an open conversation. Well, I haven't cheated. Well, I haven't. I was just like,
I know. Yeah.
it's just a UTI, but and this is something that can be quite freaky. Sometimes with urine infection, it isn't unheard of to actually piss blood,
Mm,
and that was what Dan was having. And it is very very different to like period menstruation blood
mm.
because it will be it'll be kind of like watered down on the tissue, where obviously menstruation isn't. It's quite clear that it's
Obviously, yeah,
blood.
yeah.
It's a bit more it's a bit more rose coloured. Going back to I worked as a healthcare assistant in my local hospital before I went to uni, and I was on the urinary ward
Oh, were
emptying
you?
catheter bags full of hematuria, which is blood urine, and that was literally like shaking the clots. Disgusting.
There's
Yeah.
so much you've done in the medical space. We've spoken about this before, actually. Like, there's
Oh,
so much and that's why it's so cool that you talk about stuff on the podcast because it's like that background and the knowledge you've got. I mean, you're a paramedic for so long, right? And then the training before that.
well, there was one gentleman on the wards, and bear in mind, I'm 18. Like, and I grew up in Dorset. Like, exposure to life. I'd had a couple of other jobs, but I think I worked in a gift shop and I worked in a bakery. And I've been asked to go and help clean this, like, give this guy a bed bath type thing. And I'm washing this watermelon-esque object. And it's taken me the whole time we were washing it to realize that that was actually his penis. It's like this
No,
prostate cancer. Yeah. Mm.
really? Shit.
Right.
Wow. Oh my God. And you're
Yeah.
18 as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was in his 80s and lally, but still, it was like, what the fuck is that?
Oh my God, that's yeah. I feel like before we finish the pod, we need to think of some sort of crazy story related to pissing somewhere.
It's another ambulance service one. Oh, actually, before I go on to that tangent, more helpful stuff. So, show day,
Yeah,
I think I've said it before. Whack a load of tissue paper in the pan before you piss.
yeah.
Scoot your bikini over to one side. Sit on the seat. Use your ass cheek to hold the undercarriage out the way and just piss.
Mm.
And because you put toilet paper, you won't get any splashback.
Yeah,
Better than a fucking shiwi.
yeah.
But talking of shiwis, I did fashion one out of it's called a bag valve mask. And it's the thing that goes over people's faces when you're doing CPR. So I got one of those and the bit of tubing that attaches it and a clinical waste bag, taped it all together. We were stuck on standby for 7 hours waiting for police on a mental health patient with not a toilet in sight. So I had to fashion my own shiwi because we weren't allowed to leave where we were to go to the toilet. We had to wait. It's
It,
mental.
the thing is, as well, though, we've said this before, when you need to go, whether it's for a number one or a number two, and this is where it's like the freedom. I love how you call it freedom wheeze or freedom poo. It's like as a bodybuilder, I've always just been like, if I need to piss, I need to piss. Like I will literally, I just need to piss.
It's growing up in the country. It's like there ain't no public toilets when you're out on a dog walk. You just gotta find a bush. Although it is like it's like, road, fuck off. Otherwise you're gonna get piss in your face.
I love that. If you're on a dog walk, guys, make sure the dog is not nearby.
Or it's big enough that yeah, it can't actually scoot under your legs when you're squatting down.
I love it. I love it. Well, guys, make sure that you, of course, pack some tissue on show day, but also if you go for a fucking dog walk.
Yeah, literally I have tissues everywhere.
I love it. I love it. Now, of course, our next mini episode, we're going to talk about emotional bandwidth. So that's going to be, I feel like there's so much exploration with that. And
Hmm.
I really like as well because, and this is what the listeners have picked up from the feedback I've had. I thought I'd share it with you while we're camera to camera, as it were. That people like
Some shit at looking at that stuff.
well, no, it's like, people like how we just go on so many different tangents, and
Yeah,
that's what I don't know about you, but that's personally what I quite like to listen to when
yeah.
because it helps. I feel like a lot of bodybuilders have a highly, we're like the mind is, oh, so it's really cool to have these explorations.
It's like, yeah, all right, professional bodybuilder, trying to get back to the Olympia, but I'm still a person. And I think you have to remember that within the bodybuilding space because it otherwise it will just all consume you. And that's when almost it starts detracting from the joy of it because you're so stressed about whether you're able to tick your boxes. I've got a client, I'm sure she's not on social media, so she probably won't ever listen to this, but she's a veterinary surgeon and she's lifestyle but wanting to potentially transition into competing at some point. And we've been trying to go through a mock prep,
Hmm.
but work have thrown her a curveball where she's literally working 36 hours and then having like 2 days off, then another 36 hours. And she's awake for that whole time as well. And it was actually the day after Empro, I had this message from her. She was like, it's all gone to shit. Work have thrown a spanner in the works. The world's falling apart. The world's ending. And it's like, actually, let's use this as a way of kind of adjusting mindset that sometimes life throws you a curveball. You can still achieve what you want to achieve, but actually, sometimes you just need to let go and do what you need to do to earn money.
Yeah.
And bodybuilding will still be there in a month when you come back. It
Yeah.
will. It's not going anywhere. Your muscle's not going to completely fuck off. You might be a bit flatter. You're probably going to have a bit more DOMs. You may not be as strong, but within another month, you'll be back to where you were, if not exceeding where you were. And
Mhm.
it's just about reframing that mindset. And what we're working on is learning things during this time. Like she's learned that actually she really likes running. She's got a focus on because she's got a powerlifting background, SBD, and she's like, actually, I'm really enjoying just going in and training a muscle group without the pressure of doing those lifts. And like cognition's still through the roof and that sort of thing. And it's how else can we learn about ourselves through this adversity, if you want to call it adversity. It's just a bit of a fucker of a work month, really. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you can, with every setback, there's something to be learned from it about yourself if you take the opportunity. rather than spiffing out, which is what I used to do.
Yeah, 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 same. I actually had this like I guess it was almost like a mini epiphany. You know, sometimes you have this like, whoa. And I was like, as a coach, we're like adaptability life coaches sometimes. But I
Yeah,
like that because it's like the client says this shift has gone on longer, like your example. The child's ill, the dog's gone to the vet, blah, 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 blah. All of these things. It's like, okay, so let's reframe it, as you said. Let's do what we can do because
yeah,
bodybuilding is adaptable. And like you say,
yeah.
unless it's like, 6, 8, 10 weeks where you haven't been to the gym at all, you're not going to suddenly just literally regress and everything's gone. It's
Prime example is you're talking to somebody that turned pro in lockdown.
yeah, yeah. And you're not getting the optimal, whatever the fuck that means.
Well, that's something Dan and I have to have a conversation about. Apparently, I need to be more optimal.
But I always say, right, optimal is person dependent because what the fuck's optimal? Because we're all
Well, that's what I
different.
said to him. I was like, "What do you mean optimal?" And I think it was something about stretching. I'm not sure. I'm looking as if he's going to shout in a minute, but I don't think he can hear me.
Before we finish, do you know what you're doing for your 40th yet, or is that going to be nearer the time?
Oh, that'll be nearer the time. I don't know what I'm doing next week. That then what I'm doing in
I'm
six
going to keep
months, three
asking.
months time.
What you doing for the 40th? I
I
love it.
think you're better off asking Dan what I'm going to be doing for my 40th. I have had to say to him, I was like, he had a client due to do a show, and I was like, I'm sorry. There is very few times that I will ever say no. But my 30th was shit. I got dumped the day afterwards. A mirror fell on my head and broke. Like, I want to actually have an enjoyable 40th, and it will not be spent watching an amateur bodybuilding show. So, whoever that client was.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's not happening. Well, of course, guys, thank you for listening. And thank you, Romana, for joining me again. I love our episodes. It's such a vibe.
Indeed. And I shall see you for the next one.
Yes, you will. See you later.
Later, bye.